couldn't talk. I'm serious. She couldn't talk. A toddler, a young child, 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 years old, and she couldn't talk. To be more honest with you, she wouldn't talk. Fear would grip her like a hand around her throat, and she simply couldn't open her mouth. She didn't speak in public, that was that. She would nod and she would shake her head to answer to simple yes or no questions. But I kid you not, this little girl barely spoke for the first few years of her life. Selective mutism, that's what this little girl had. Selective mutism, that's what I had, because I am that little girl. Choosing when I would speak and when I wouldn't, I lived life in a very small box, scared to death of coming out. And like a turtle constantly in its shell, my lack of courage kept me very well hidden for a very long time. But eventually, that little girl who was terrified of speaking to even her best friends found courage, and she spoke. In public, in private, she spoke. And she shared her ideas and opinions and faced the words that she had so feared to communicate those around her. 11 years ago, it would have been completely unimaginable to be standing on a stage like this, speaking to an audience of hundreds. When opening your mouth is your greatest fear, you don't really dare to think about such things. I needed to be courageous, and I wasn't. And yes, I've overcome that obstacle in my life, but I still get scared sometimes because I'm afraid of things just like you. I have doubts and I have concerns. Sometimes courage itself is the thing that I fear, and I don't know how I'm going to overcome it. But in life, there are dangerous and there are risky journeys we have to embark on, ones that will take courage. One of those journeys is the path to pursuing excellence. Because we're all good at something. No matter where you come from, your background, your education, you have something valuable inside of you and something good to offer to the world. My goal today is to inspire you to pursue excellence. And when I say excellence, I'm not talking about being the best of the best or the top of the leaderboards or the top of the charts. I'm talking about pouring your whole self into what you do. It's a little scary at times, and I guarantee you it's going to take some courage. When I'm talking about courage, I'm not speaking of the absence of fear. I'm talking about being terrified, but daring to step outside of your box anyway. Do not allow another person, system, or organization to define your capabilities. Why? Because they're not you. And at the end of accomplishing something, you want to be able to say, I gave that my all. Today, I believe that our society needs its youth to be self-motivated, courageous, team-playing adults, students who are ready to pursue mastery. But it all starts with the types of environments in which we're placed, specifically our schools. I believe that youth have the ability to design and run their own educations, and that it's possible for us to have more of a say in how it's structured. I also stand on the fact that youth truly care about what they're studying. So if it looks like some don't care on the outside, is that reason enough to believe that we don't care at all? Our effort as students should never be towards the minimum, and if it is, why not create a community that'll hold us accountable to our personal best? And since it's necessary that we're prepared for adulthood, let's not go into it blindly, but be launched into the future, ready to pursue mastery. I've been called an overachiever sometimes. Not because I'm necessarily an overachiever, but I tend to make overachiever goals. For example, in 6th grade, I was participating in a science fair, and I decided to extract DNA from peas as my science fair project. In my freshman year, I took on Arabic as my 3rd foreign language and set the goal of becoming fluent by the end of high school. I just simply loved biology, and I loved languages. I've grown up in an environment where I was constantly encouraged and pushed to pursue my best. So in some areas, I really decided to step outside of the box. This was not always the case, though. You see, middle school came by and hit me like a slap in the face with pre-algebra. And numbers started disappearing and letters started appearing. And I got very, very confused. And ever since then, math has become my worst enemy and my worst nightmare. I've struggled with it ever since. I saw no way to do an excellent job because I didn't see a way that I could do a good job. But because of that struggle, I learned an important lesson, and that lesson was taking courageous leaps of faith and pursuing excellence should never be about pleasing the select few who are in control. My goal in math should not have been about getting an acceptable grade just so the teacher could be pleased with me. I needed to reach for what I could do well, and I wasn't. I went for the minimum of my ability instead of stretching beyond what I thought accomplishable. Taking that leap of faith, reaching just a little bit beyond what you think you can do, is scary at times. When we strive for our best, it sometimes isn't easy. About a year ago, my mother approached me, and she approached me because she had an idea. And that idea was that I could try a higher degree of student-directed learning in my next school year. You see, my mother is a very intelligent woman and typically has great ideas. But when she told me that I would need to collaborate within a group to run my own learning experience, I told her that it was a very bad idea. I disagreed with her completely. But eventually, I knew, and she knew, that it was time to take a crazy leap of faith. And it was at this time when she introduced me to the Independent Project. Now, the Independent Project has many different parts and pieces to it, but to throw it in a nutshell, we're a student-directed learning group that collaborates to run our own learning experiences with excellence. Now, student-directed learning is not entirely a new idea. It's been happening for decades in homes all over the world, where kids are given the opportunity to create, design, and then pursue what they want to study. The Independent Project, though, was the first time this idea was brought to a public school. And in 2011, students of Monument Mountain Regional High School in Massachusetts began the Independent Project. And after it ran for one semester, they wrote a descriptive paper called the White Paper on the specific design of how it ran. When we were ready to start TIP, as we call the Independent Project, here in Lancaster, we used the White Paper as a base for our ideas and for our decision-making. While we were aware that people had done TIP before us, it was our goal to create our own independent project. This was going to be uniquely us. And we designed TIP to consist of three main parts. 3 solutions to combat struggles we thought we had outside of a student-directed learning system. Number 1, posing and answering questions within a designated subject area. Number 2, pursuing a year-long personal project. And number 3, collaborating at the end of the year to complete a group endeavor. It was also our goal to create a loving and caring community, an encouraging one that would hold us to our personal best, because ultimately, we wanted to ensure that our academics were being done with true excellence. One issue I see in our schools today, and I do mean whether public or private, and even at home, is that for many students, schoolwork is almost exclusively something that they have to do, not something they actually have a desire to do, and it can become almost irrelevant. Sitting in a classroom, eyes glazed over, without a care for what they're studying, those aren't the students who are ready to excel. But is that reason enough to believe that they don't want to at all? I believe that we have bought into a ridiculous lie if we think that that is anywhere near the truth. What we have done in the Independent Project is we designed it so that students were posing and answering their own questions within a designated subject area. And we set it up so that we were studying from 4 core subjects throughout the year: social sciences, logic, natural sciences, and visual arts. Each week, on Mondays, we became our own teachers and came to TIP with new questions in mind. Let me give you an idea of what a typical TIP, yes, I know the puns come with the territory, so we've heard all of them. Typical, tip of the iceberg, we've heard them all. But what a typical TIP week would look like. On Monday, we came with ideas for new questions, having already thought about that over the weekend. The group would then help us refine and sharpen our questions into a more manageable research project. So if your question was a little bit too broad, we'd help you kind of narrow it down and specify it so it was easier for you to research. On the other hand, if your question was maybe a little too narrow, we would ask you more questions to hopefully inspire you to broaden it out a little bit. One thing to get used to in TIP was the constructive criticism. Personally, I wanted to study bioethics this year. And during the 10 weeks of social sciences, weeks that we set aside to focus solely on that subject, through research that I found in books or interviews with professionals, magazines, and medical journals, I formed opinions and gained knowledge on issues like organ donation or euthanasia, prenatal screening, and embryonic research. So when my presentation day came on Fridays, the group would then offer critiques and encouragement. Critiques into areas that I could improve upon, and encouragement to things that I was already doing well. That way I was constantly being refined and sharpened so that academically I was different from when I had started. The independent project is set up in such a way that it enables students to be prepared for the crucial transition and merge from child to adult and from dependence to independence. And this is best exemplified in two ways. Number one, our individual endeavors, and number two, our collective endeavor. When they did the independent project in Massachusetts, each student picked a skill that they wanted to master or improve upon, and that became their individual endeavor. We did that as well in Lancaster. Each kid picked something that they wanted to master. We were given no boundaries in what we could study or pursue. We made schedules for ourselves. We had to learn how to manage our own time and had weekly check-ins with one another. Because of that process, out of TIP have come self-motivated authors, poets, artists, musicians, computer programmers, and communicators, students who are ready to pursue mastery. Another way that we're prepared for adulthood is through our collective endeavor. I gotta be honest with you, I was a little nervous about doing a group project with people that I really didn't know, people I wasn't quite friends with. But by the end of the year, these people were my dearest and best friends, and I was ready to throw myself into a collective endeavor with them. Had I allowed myself to stay in the place of being fearful and scared and not wanting to work with them, I wouldn't be the person I am today. And having completed our collective endeavor, which was to be on this stage, I'm a completely changed and different person. I learned the skills of realizing that each and every member of my team was valuable and needed to accomplish the goals we wanted to accomplish and to achieve the prizes we wanted to achieve. And those skills are skills that I will need for a lifetime. The independent project was an adventure. And it was one that I was scared to death of. It was a huge leap of faith for me, a step way outside my comfort zone, but it's a leap that I would take again and again, and a step that I would keep stepping. My goal today was to inspire you to pursue excellence. Even when it's scary, to still pursue it. Even if you think that this is the largest leap of faith you're ever going to have to take, to still leap. Even if you're scared that your idea might not even work, to still try it. As the technological mastermind Steve Jobs once said, here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs and the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them about the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward, and while some see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the ones who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. And so, today, to my fellow TIP students, Rachel, Caleb, Travis, Phil, Drew, Blake, Juliet, and Lyric, to all of you I say, pursue excellence. Be courageous. Dare to be a little bit of a crazy one. Thank you.